What if you could take those spiritually dry, desert, wilderness seasons of your life and turn them into spiritually fruitful ones? Hey, my name's Rod, and we are taking a journey chronologically through the Bible, and thanks for being with us. Let's look at Genesis 21:33. It says, "Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba." Now, Beersheba is in the wilderness, desert region. And there he worshiped the Lord, the eternal God. Now remember that not only is Abraham in the wilderness, but he's also in Philistine territory. Perhaps you're in the wilderness right now, or perhaps you're surrounded, if you will. You find the enemy on all fronts of your life. And so why would Abraham in a similar situation plant a tamarisk tree? Well, Abraham plants this tree after God confirms his covenant to Abraham. And since Abraham plants a tree nowhere else in biblical literature, this is important for us to understand and for us to look into. This tree becomes a landmark identifying where Abraham encountered God. There was an encounter there. And I believe that the most significant encounters that we can have in our lives as followers of Jesus are in periods of wilderness or desert seasons. So this tree becomes a visible testimony of God's faithfulness, and it establishes a spiritual marker for Abraham. Now, I think of a spiritual marker. Perhaps you're traveling down the road, and you know those mileage markers you see every once in a while, and they tell you, those markers are there. They tell you where you've been, where you're at, and where you're going. And it's important in our spiritual lives to do the same. So what does a spiritual marker look like? Well, it could be the day you said yes to Jesus and surrendered your life. It could be water baptism. Those are markers in your life where you realize that when the wilderness seasons come, and they do, when the desert regions are in front of us, when we're surrounded by the enemies, we look back and we say, this is where I've come from, and this is where I'm at. But you know what? This is where God has taken me. Then we come to chapter 22. And Abraham's faith is tested. This is a very familiar chapter to many people. It's the chapter where Abraham has to take his son Isaac, and God's asking him to sacrifice Isaac on the altar. And then at the last moment, the angel sends a ram to be sacrificed instead of his son. And what's interesting about this is that it's really a call to Abraham, a test of obedience in his life. So that's significant in our story as well. We come to chapter 23 now. We're cruising right along. Sarah dies, Abraham's wife, and Abraham purchases a tomb for her for 400 shekels of silver. And you say, that's a pretty significant price. How does that compare to other purchases? Well, if you look throughout Scripture, most of them were in the 30 to 50 pieces of silver range. So 400 would be extraordinary. Why does Abraham pay that much for it? He was saying, I'm all in on this. No one's going to be able to dispute that I own this. No one's able to dispute that this is mine, where my wife is buried. And in other words, he's saying, everything I'm doing up to this point, God, I am all in on this. First, he sacrifices his son. Then he pays 400 pieces of silver for his wife's burial. And look what Jesus says about this in Luke chapter 9. Not about the story of Abraham, but about the call to us. Then he said to the crowd, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross daily and follow me. If you hang on to your life, you'll lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake, you'll find it. And I believe this is where Abraham was. He's saying, God, I am all in on every place. The testing in the wilderness shows us how much of our life we're trying to hold on to. Chapter 24, as we wrap this up, a rich story as the servant of Abraham is sent now to find a bride for his son, Isaac. How would you like to have that kind of dating app in your life? I don't think so, right? I mean, she's going to come back, the guy she's never met, he's going to meet some girl, and you get the story. There's two thoughts I have about this. First, prayer and action go together. Notice that there was, if you read the chapter, and I want you to read the chapter 24, Abraham prays, the servant prays, Rebecca prays. I mean, everyone's praying, and then there's action, right? And then second is faith calls us to leave what's familiar and to go for what's promised. You see, in desert moments, God often does his best work in our lives. Notice Abraham plants a tree, is about ready to sacrifice his son, spends a lot of money for a tomb, sends a servant for a bride for his son. And on all these stories, Abraham is stepping forth in complete obedience and trust and dependence on the Lord. You see, some of us may pray and not act. And some of us may act and not pray. And God says, faith is pray and action together. So here's a couple questions. In a dry season, what steps can you take to deepen your spiritual roots? Second, what is something you're holding on to that needs to be placed on the altar? And third, what do you need to pray and act on in order to move forward in these days ahead? So hey, if you liked the video, we got plenty more that we've done and that are coming. Check them out. We'd love to have you do that. And I'd love to have you comment on any insights you have, anything I may have missed in this as well. God bless you. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.